All right, good evening. Welcome to the Georgetown School Committee meeting of Thursday, February 28th. First, on the agenda, we're going to do a little moving around because the girls are in the first playoff game tonight.
Second
playoff game tonight, and we want to get Mr. DeFranco over to the game to cheer them on.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to do the consent. You can come on up, Chris. I'm going to do the consent agenda, and then we're going to get right into his section.
Okay, great.
So first up is the approval of minutes from the regular session of February 14th, 2013, and the acceptance of warrants 35V13 and 34P13. The chair will entertain a motion as to approve this.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, Chris. So, I guess, how do you?
So what you're gonna do? What you're
open
gonna
up
now?
to the
Yeah.
right tab.
Yeah. Tab K is your tab on athletics. And so just as a quick introduction, and I do thank Chris for being here. Peter is actually at the game already because the high school principal should be represented, as should the athletic director, who will get there eventually, to the game. So I appreciate Chris taking the time to be here tonight. So one of the things that we do as part of the budget is we look at not only our school programs, but we look at our departments, our various, and tonight basically we're going to go over those areas of the budget. So in tab K, what we do to build the budget is the first thing we do is we ask Chris to put together what he believes the budget will cost to deliver the sports program for the FY, in this case, the FY13 athletic budget. And just as I explained last week, how we build the budget on our end for the schools and the district lines is we start with a series of assumptions. Okay, we have some challenges with athletics. We've had some challenges for years with athletics, and we're not solving our challenges with athletics in this budget. I think we should just say that right from the beginning, that we have still some concerns. They quickly go back I can go back as far as I've been here. And a year I came, there was a failed override. And one of the decisions that was made at that time was that sports was basically going to be 100% funded by the athletes. There was no money in the budget at that point, in the budget that I inherited the year that I came. One of the nice things is when you have a new, fresh set of eyes, usually people are willing to let you take a look at it, and that's what I did, working with my administrative team. 50% of them, by the way, were brand new to the district, as was I. And we really took a look, and one of the things we did in this budget that we were able to bring forward is we did add some relief to the athletes by putting $33,000 in school choice. Always assuming it wasn't going to stay there forever, but at least it allowed us to be able to keep athletic fees, which were really high. I mean, those fees at the time were $370 and $450, and when we looked at ourselves across the state, we were among the highest fees in the state, which didn't make any of us happy, especially since we believe in athletics, that it's a core part of our program, and it is not an extra.
Yeah, as NEASC pointed out, it's co-curricular.
And it's co-curricular, and that was one of the
extracurricular.
things that NEASC has certainly looked at. So when we had the override, we decided that one of the priorities would be to put $68,000 in the budget, in addition to the $33,000 in choice, lower the user fees, and see where we were able to go. It helped. The families gave a little relief, but it didn't allow us to run the sports program in the way that we needed to have it run at a surplus. It's not a money making thing, but we want to be able. We don't want to be just like we don't want to have our budgets at home be down to the penny. I mean, we have ended our budget in the last 3 years about $14,000 to $16,000 in deficit, which we have had to dip in to our school choice revolving account to cover, just to get through
for break even.
Just for break even.
And that's not buying new uniforms. It's not doing anything.
No, one of the things we do rely heavily on is fundraising done by coaches and their teams. That is a lot of how we've gotten new equipment and new uniforms. So if you look at the beginning page on tab K, you'll see the assumptions that this budget is based on. It does include the current $68,000 in the budget again next year. It does include the current school choice budget of $33,000. So if we decide that we're not going to, or we're going to diminish the school choice amount we're willing to put in, or we're going to eliminate altogether, we know that we need $33,000 more to get this, to make this budget work. It does maintain a family cap of $1,500, and we do have statistics. We did collect that information as to how many families benefit from that.
Yeah, so one of the things that hadn't been in previous budgets was actual paid athletes. So they were just calculating all of the athletes there, kind of assuming that they were all paying, but we found about 7%, whether because of family cap or free and reduced lunch, don't actually pay the user fee. So we calculated that into the budget this year, so that's something.
So that's part of why we ended up with $14,000
Right.
deficits, because if we only had 400 athletes paying, but we were thinking we had 430, we started out at a deficit with that. So that's important. And that's the next bullet. We did make sure that anyone who comes forward and says, I do receive a free and reduced lunch, then the food service director, to maintain confidentiality, since she's the only one who has access to that information, verifies, the information, and then that moves forward. And then, Triple E, is probably not going away. We'd like to believe it will, but one of the things that Chris did do in this budget is he assumed that it wasn't going to go away, and then did put some money in here to budget for that. And
It'd probably
then
be cheaper to spray the fields than it would be to.
well, I think,
bus
and
everyone over
that
to
was
Whittier.
one of the things that I know the Board of Health, did a few times. But then once you spray the fields, you can't be
Oh, yeah,
on
you
them
have
for
to-
3
yeah.
days. So, when you're in the heart of the season, and you're playing
No,
games every other
I
day.
said it,
it's-
yeah,
in jest, yes.
jest.
And then just so you know, the current user fees, and the committee actually already increased the user fees.
$25.
$25
This year.
So this is based on the current user fees are $280 and $350. So then, Chris did a wonderful job going through what the options might be for us, and then he and Peter Lucia came over, met with Joan and I, met with the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. We went back and forth a few times to come up with a variety of options that would allow us to work with our current program. So what you see on this, under this tab, is the option one, the 3-tiered user fee. Right now we have a 2-tiered user fee, but we do have some sports that are very expensive, more expensive. They have either shorter roster, more games, more bus rides, for whatever reason. And then there are some sports that are much less expensive to run, cross country being one. So option one that we're recommending is a 3-tiered user fee. And Chris breaks down for you how those sports are divvied up in terms of which tier they would fall into. And then he tells you what the projected end of year balance would be. And then if you turn the page, these were all the other options that were reviewed. And you can see there was one option that was 300, 400, 500. And then you can see that most of those, if not all of those, continue to end in a deficit. The only other option that we looked at was if we go with the 3-tiered, that's one thing. But if we feel that we need a more of a balance, or you decide that school choice is not an option you want to continue to apply, then we looked at what sports we would cut. And the sport we'd recommend would be freshman basketball. That would still leave middle school, because we would run a middle school program then. That would leave middle school, junior varsity, and varsity. And there is an impact. We thought it was the impact to the fewest students, however. I think the impact for the good freshmen, the students that were really good freshmen would probably still play JV, but the kids who maybe aren't as strong that would normally make the team, because the freshmen would play freshmen, they wouldn't be able to play freshmen. So some of the upperclassmen may may suffer the consequences of that decision. But if you've had a chance to look through your packet, you've had a chance to kind of see what was being discussed. And then for each one of these things, Chris and Joan together, I think, worked on the spreadsheets, but they did a spreadsheet for each one of the options, basically, right? So that you can see it for those of you who like to look at big picture spreadsheets as opposed to narrative lines and tables. This gives you the background on that. So, Chris, I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like to feature or recommendations. Otherwise, I think we can entertain some questions from the school committee.
Right. I think the most important thing to me, if possible, is to not cut sports. I think once you cut a sport, it's pretty much gone forever. So if the numbers if the kids coming out to play don't dictate that we need a team, this year we didn't have a freshman girls basketball team because there weren't enough kids. That's okay. But if we cut a team and because of that some kids don't get an opportunity to play, that kind of goes against the mission of the athletic department, which is to maximize playing opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did talk at the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. We did talk about, maybe looking at it in two phases. So if phase one, which is why the recommendation is to adjust the user fee to 3 tiers, it is not to cut a sport. If for whatever reason that didn't work, then in another year, the committee may be in a position, because you're not going to want to keep raising user fees every year. So you either have to make a commitment to more money in the budget, right? Or you have to increase user fees, or we have to reduce things, or we have to decide, are we going to offer the sports we have, and is there another sport we should be offering where we can have greater participation? Because those are all decisions that need to be made going forward.
And the thing that we have to be careful of, if we don't raise fees every year, and this is what got us into trouble before, our costs are going up every year.
Right.
The cost of buses increases, the cost of the officials, the coaches, and those are really the big ones, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Equipment actually does go up too.
Okay.
Basketballs and soccer balls. Yeah.
All right, so and everything is going up, so if we keep the fees flat, we're constantly shrinking that and creating a bigger deficit for ourselves.
Right. And one of the things we are talking about is the $68,000 that's in the budget. Looking at charging, like the athletic director stipend and a portion of the coaches' salaries. They wouldn't all fit, but a portion of the coaches' salaries. And then when they get raises each year, just like when we build our budget for our teachers, we know they're getting a raise, we know what their raise is, and we build it into the budget. It's just how we start the budget process. Well, if we put some of these salary lines in the budget, we know that we're just going to, whatever the raise is going to go in. That would make the budget go up. That would be a budgetary contribution a little bit more each year and would have less burden on the athletic revolving account. That's something we can do that would give a little bit more money into the budget.
But that'll require a cut somewhere else in our budget. If you're going to start moving them off of choice under the
yeah, I mean that's correct. That's correct.
Well, something else will have to get reduced.
Well, or go for an increase at year end,
The school committee.
Yeah,
Our budget.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Increase the budget.
Absolutely. Right. But if you're going to take, like, if you have $68,000 right now that's supporting athletics, or I'm sorry, say 33 on choice, and you want to move that onto the budget, it means you need to find 33,000.
Right.
Somewhere.
Or what you have to do is what we've done in other situations with school choice. I'm thinking in particular when we went to full day kindergarten. In order to do full day kindergarten for all, we temporarily put a couple of salaries into school choice. And then the following year, we moved one back, and then the following year we moved another back. So you don't have to look at it as it's 33 and then it's not 33. We even talked about that this year. Should we say, all right, now we don't have 33, you have 23 this year. The following, so over a 4-year period, you're getting to a point where it's not such a dramatic drop off. And certainly Chris is going to do some recruiting because we have that bubble class going through that's now in the seventh grade, right? So if they come into the 8th grade, then more kids may participate in the high school program, which would certainly help us. But our programs, unfortunately, we don't really qualify for a co-op at this point because we have enough kids to make it almost work for us without having another team. Like we lost the track opportunity at the high school because Ipswich ended up with
Reached their
enough kids.
numbers.
Right.
So, there's so many issues. It's really not a cut and dried. And like I said, for Chris to come in with all the options and really thought them through, I give him a lot of credit because it's the nuances are quite amazing. So, other questions from the committee?
Just what strikes me, and again, I don't have a child in middle or high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at this program and I'm thinking, it seems incredibly small.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a small program. I mean, there's so few sports included.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go to a very big high school, but the options for the kids are pretty limited here.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder about the history. Like, how did we get to these sports as opposed to other sports? But maybe that's not. I'm not. But you did mention something like, is this really what the majority of students are interested in participating in? I mean, it does seem like traditional, football, basketball, those are very traditional sports.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm sad about how small it is, and that
Well,
it's
it's
such a
interesting.
struggle. It sounds
you-
like such a struggle to just maintain what we.
You
even
meet all
have.
of these folks in town,
Yes.
over the years that you're in a place, and they'll talk to me about how when they went to school in Georgetown, there was a hockey team, there was a track team. I mean, there were all of these options were available to people in Georgetown years ago. So I think some of it has been that the costs have definitely increased. And then kids have other things that they do too. I mean, when of course, my father was an athletic director and a health teacher, so I was playing 3 sports. There was no question, and there were my brothers and sisters. But at the same time, that was a great thing. But most of the people that I knew played sports as part of, but, I know places where there's no athletic fees at all, and kids still don't necessarily play sports. Times have changed a little bit, too. But I think it's a cost factor too. But that's one of the things we've talked about. I think Rob had brought that up at our budget and finance subcommittee meeting, is going forward, looking at where we want to be. We need to probably do a little work getting information from our student body, really looking at some of the history. Are these the sports that are going to?
Would we have larger participation if other sports were offered?
Well, golf's a good example of how it can work potentially. We had a golf co-op with Pentucket that was ended, basically the same reason that the track and field was ended, that they grew to the point where they couldn't get accepted by the MIA as a co-op team with us anymore. Essentially, once you start making cuts, that's when you get to that point.
Right.
And we had a group of parents and kids who wanted to have a Georgetown golf team, and we said, let's try it as a club this year. And it had to be user funded, so we figured out how much it would cost to pay a coach and all those sorts of things, and they paid in, and they got a little more than 20 kids to do it, which is great.
Yeah.
So this year I've proposed putting in a golf team, so bringing that back as a user funded sport, and then if it survives, then we'll look at adding it into the budget in 3 years.
My sense is that you have one or two very aware parents in the community, and they see, oh, my kid's interested in golf, I'm going to come and talk to. But we were just saying, how many parents really understand that they could take that step? If you had a child who was interested in a particular sport, would you just look at the school and go, oh, we're out of luck, we don't get that sport? Or would they know that they could actually contact somebody, somehow take some action? And
I do
how
have
could you
parents come to me a lot and ask about, could we have a swim team? Could we have a ski team? Could we have a volleyball team? All those sorts of things. And what I always say is I need to see that there's numbers of people that are interested. And more often than not, there aren't.
They can't get the numbers.
Right. And the golf was an
Okay.
exception to that, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing. It's interesting. It's good to know. Yeah.
I mean, some districts, Hamilton, yeah.
Isn't that 100%?
They've gone to a system where, let's say one year this happened with their girls softball program. They said, okay, this is what it costs, and you have that that information in your packet, what every one of our sports costs. And the only sport that pays for itself is middle school track. And we don't even have a track. But middle school track pays for itself. That's the only sport. Every other sport runs in a deficit.
And that's like
cheering?
45 students.
Right.
Right.
What about cheering?
Cheering runs in a deficit.
But interestingly, so you have 45 students on middle school track. When you get to the high school level, I think last year we had 7 students.
Do we even have that many, Chris, that went to the co-op? I thought it was more like 3. for
It
track.
depended on the
Was it-
season.
Okay.
So in the winter we had 3.
Okay.
In the spring we had 10.
Okay.
There you go. There's 7.
And part of that is a cultural thing too, where you have perhaps the group where there's 3, 4, 7, whatever that age group, and then now there's this other group and their age group and their culture, and you have all this interest in that.
Yeah.
And so it is cyclical that way.
Yeah.
One of the things that's really, I don't know how you get a handle on it, but in terms of what sports and those kinds of questions, excellence breeds excellence, and excellence breeds excitement, and how you can find out what sports that we may or may not be offering right now, that if you focused on those and not and not others, you breed this kind of excellence that people that never thought they wanted to do it now start to want to do it as time goes by, and towns have done that. There have been a number of towns that become these little mini powerhouses known for this sport and that sport, and that's just another part.
Well, I think the other thing that feeds into it too is your feeder systems, right? So, GAA offers certain kinds of sports, and that gives kids so, you get it to go to Millen High School, you might want to continue with those sports. So there's a lot of factors. So one of the
Lacrosse
things.
is a good example of that.
Lacrosse is a very good example of that.
That wasn't really anything I can't remember how
Right.
many years ago it
Yes,
started.
and then
Didn't
Heather.
exist.
Yeah, it didn't, yeah.
It started the year before I came, so I think it's like 7 years.
Was it about 5? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that would make sense.
And that, there was a couple of parents who were very, very into lacrosse, and they did exactly what Chris is saying. They started with a club program, and then it made its way, into the budget. But there's a lot of factors, the coach and how well kids like the coach, whether the facility is such that, it's good, there's the chemistry of the teams. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but one of the things that if we're going to look at this issue of sustainability, we're going to have to start teasing out some of those variables. But for the FY14 budget, in the short term, we're trying to figure out, well, of these options, which option, none of them are great options, by the way, but which of them is going to get us through the year and is not going to result in us, running all year in a deficit. Of course, when you raise user fees, you're not sure whether the raising of user fees is going to jeopardize the participation.
Absolutely.
It hasn't seemed to, again, short-term data collection would indicate that we have no more athletes playing now, or no fewer athletes playing now than we did when our fees were $450 and $370 for some reason.
Our number of participants went down this year, 2
years
ago,
2 years ago.
excuse me, when we lowered the athletic fees.
So fees are a factor, when I talk
the deciding
individually with
factor.
people, but it's
Right.
not necessarily the factor.
Right.
And remember the basketball discussion, you heard people saying, well, just tell us what it's going to cost,
Right,
and we'll
and we'll
increase
do
the
it,
fee.
yeah.
Because we want our students to have this opportunity to
Yeah.
play. So those are the dilemmas that we face. So Chris's recommendation, and I think the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation, Joan and I, we came to the conclusion that of all these options, the option 1, doing the 3-tiered user fees, $375, $425, and $475, was the recommendation. And thinking about that, we were trying to respond to the fact that some schools or some sports, we always get people asking the question, well, my child, all you're buying my child is a T-shirt to run in cross country. How do you charge $370, right? And then you're also charging $370 for, another sport that's more costly to run. So we've never had a good answer to that, because we always say we have to split the shared costs. That's how we, because we have a choice. We could do what Hamilton is doing and saying, this is what it costs, and if you don't get this many kids by this date, there will be no program this year in that. And that's what they did with their softball program one year. They didn't run girls softball because they didn't get enough athletes. That's one way to go. The other way to go is to look at this. We have certain shared costs that get divvied up across the board, and we just know we run a deficit in every sport. But it's 94% user fee funded, and that's the reality. So we were recommending that, not cutting any sports for this particular year. And as Chris said, seeing whether or not some of the sports weed themselves out, if we don't have enough students for whatever reason that are interested or able to play.
Does that, if I'm reading this right, that leaves us $871.
$871, yes.
Right.
So if we start to hit lower roster sizes on any of these
Right.
sports,
I think we've accounted for that a little bit better than we have in the past.
Okay.
Because we're doing the paying customers.
Paid athletes, we've
Okay.
accounted for Triple E, which was a big thing.
Okay.
Tournament buses, which is something that once you get into the state tournament, the bus rides get longer and longer. We remember going to Worcester last year, and that was a long, pretty expensive bus ride.
yeah.
So
It's great that the girls have made it this far, but let's be clear, we're paying for more buses now.
So I think the budget is more real. I guess that's,
Okay.
Absolutely.
I
Sounds
think
like
that's,
it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It sounds very well
so.
considered.
Yeah. All right, any more questions for Chris? We can get him off to cheer the girls on.
I'll be tweeting. The,
Yes, please. Well, text.
We don't have to.
I'm not into tweeting. I don't tweet. I text.
My only concern with this is really it's break even.
Yeah.
Is that once the paid athlete numbers start to fall, how we're gonna mitigate that. Especially I get nervous with football only at 18 and 14 for varsity and JV or freshmen. 14 is, I don't know, how you
those
make it.
kids actually, a lot of them play both. So they'll play in the freshman game, and then they'll be on the varsity roster as well.
Okay,
Oh, good.
So there is crossover there.
all right. That's my only concern is the roster sizing, and there's no wiggle room. So that's a risk you're willing to take? That's,
I think it's calculated
I
risk.
think it's a
yeah, okay,
calculated risk.
all right.
And honestly, if it doesn't work, then we do need to go back to the drawing board and say, all right, here we go. Either more goes in the budget, or we offer different sports, or if we can't afford football, or we try to figure out a way to share the costs in some way with another school that might be interested.
Or we ask the families. Like you said, the basketball families
Right.
showed up and said, "Tell us how much it is, and we'll pay it." And
Well,
that-
but remember, that was a fraction
There
of
was
all
a
the people that
small
play basketball.
Portion.
That's the thing that
They can't
concerns me.
necessarily speak
No,
for everyone.
right,
yeah.
that's what concerns me is there, and it was great that people came out, but I'm sure there were other families as well where
they were
the
sitting home
$300
going, "Oh
fee
my
is-
gosh, yeah.
is enough for them to muster for a sport for a child.
Right.
That's
And
what,
it's good to hear from
Absolute-
the public
I- yeah,
and what their
I think
concerns
it's
are.
great,
We
but-
absolutely want to.
but we have to be clear that it wasn't, I'm gonna guess it was about a third of the paying basketball people.
I'm not sure it was that much.
Maybe
Yeah.
less, maybe
Yeah.
smaller.
And as Barbie said, I
Still,
mean,
everybody
every year,
counts.
you're talking about the budget in totality, in its totality. So, maybe there'll be other movement in the budget that would allow you to put, more
Right.
money in the budget. So those are all things that, are out there that could possibly happen.
You just have to start recruiting more.
That's
athletes.
right, more athletes.
Right.
My money's on Chris, I think he can do it.
All right, so we're gonna keep going on revolving, right?
Well, I
Or
think.
on the other,
Well,
so I'm just trying to
let's-
think of
let's
getting
think.
Chris out of here.
Yeah, I guess we don't need to take any kind of a vote. Although, do you need to vote on those user fees? Because I'm thinking that,
It's going to go into the athletic handbook.
Right.
which is in May, right?
Which we vote on, yep.
So you're gonna vote on the whole budget on
We-
March 7th anyway.
We
So
adopt next week.
yeah, so I think it's okay, Chris.
need to
We'll
agree.
just. I mean, are
We
you
support an option.
Are you in concept in support of Chris's recommendation?
I support it, I don't like it.
I don't
No
like it either.
offense to you, I mean,
None of us like it.
Yeah, I
No,
just
I,
the idea that we're at almost $500 for a sport is
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
just it's a big number.
it's a huge number.
yeah, I don't like to see user fees going
Yeah.
up. I mean, that it shouldn't be that way. This is public school, public education, but we also can't be running at a deficit.
No.
We have to
All right.
balance the budget.
Okay, Chris, I think
you
you're
guys.
set. Go Royals.
All right.
Good luck.
Good
I
luck.
hope they do
Go
good.
Royals.
Text Carol or something. So
Yes,
we know.
definitely. Thanks again, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, so let's just think about where you want to go next. Well, why don't we just follow on here? Let's go to to L. This is the buildings and grounds, and you can remember that Joan consolidated the buildings and grounds budgets from the schools into the overall district maintenance, which is why you see the increases. It's just a reflecting a budgeting in a different spot. Joan, is there anything that you would want to point out in this budget?
Yep, in the second part, the maintenance salaries district, you'll notice an increase there. We reorganized mid-year, I think it was around mid-year, no, it couldn't be mid-year, we're mid-year now.
No,
Mid-year
it was
since
early.
I've come, so maybe around October. Mike was really spending a lot of money on contracted services, trying to keep up with the maintenance issues. So we sat down, the three of us, and we talked about a way to do business better, more efficiently, or whatever. So we added a maintenance person. We reorganized. We had a half a maintenance person at the high school and a half custodial position. And just really couldn't get there was too many custodial responsibilities. So we reorganized that position and took a piece of money away from that position. And then we took some monies that our school custodians were budgeted, and we talked about this when we were at the building level, that were budgeted out of the district budget, and we put back to some of the revolving accounts in order to free up monies to add this position. So you'll see that increase there. The 45.9% increase is a position plus, raises that they would get. But it's really helped us because if you look at the two lines down, that's all we have for contracted services is $106,000 budgeted. So that's not a lot of money when things go and you need to call in plumbers and electricians and what have you. So we feel like, we can't really measure yet because we haven't had a person on for the full year, but already they've taken care of a lot of projects. They did a lot of the cable wiring when we did the security cameras, and things that would have cost us a lot of money to put out if we could even get people to come and do it, because when we were trying to purchase all that security stuff, people were right out straight security companies. So they really saved us there. We know that. So I just want to point that out. And then basically we just took the rest of the monies that were budgeted at the schools and put it in that bottom line. And then up at the telephones, right up above there, telephones district-wide, you see a 54% decrease. That's because we implemented, we're implementing right now the E-rate program, which is a federal reimbursement program designed originally for libraries, but includes schools and libraries, and it's to increase students' access to internet. And that's the funding. It's been around for decades. We hadn't really taken advantage of that. It's quite cumbersome. I actually hired a consultant to do the paperwork because it just takes so long to do the paperwork, and if you make one little mistake, you lose your funding for that year, and everything has to be done a year in advance for the following year. So we're
Savings pay for the consultant.
Oh, absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
it,
we're
yeah.
probably going to save, over $20,000. The consultant costs $3,000, and so we did it in a way that we'll get credits. We instead of taking cash, we took the credit on our bills, so we'll get credits for our internet service, our regular telephones, our cell phones. There was one other thing. So it's really something that is important. And probably in a small district, people probably didn't look at it because it's very cumbersome. But what's fascinating and what is really important here is that if you do it properly and you plan appropriately, it can give you reimbursement on the building project, because it will, as long as we have our technology plan in place and we have the specs written appropriately and file the right forms, they will give you reimbursement on new building projects. So there's another
Right.
big thing, so, but,
The people who need to know that know that.
well, we need to know, you
We're
have to
on
be filed for the
We're both on
school.
the building
Okay.
committee.
Right, it has to
so-
be filed
Yeah.
by the school districts. They're the
Okay.
only, and libraries can file too, so, yeah, we'll be on top of it, and so I'm very happy to have hired the consultant to take care of it.
That's great.
So, but other than that, I think nothing remarkable.
Okay. Okay, then let's move on to tab M in special education. So Donna, maybe you want to come on up to the table if you don't mind. Okay, so much of the special education discussion we had at the last, when we discussed the overall breakdown of the budget, particularly special education. First, I want to recognize both Donna and Joan for the real hard work they're doing, trying to really keep control over the special education budget. It is not easy. It's got many moving parts, and many things are mandated, at the team level. Sometimes outside recommendations drive some of those things, and the services are required by law. So, you don't get to say, well, okay, we'll give you the service, but we're not paying for it. So it's,
that would be
those things kind of go together, and sometimes we'll disagree and we'll have to use legal counsel to try to work out a resolution to it, and that's, costly in and of itself. But I think the other thing that I want to just emphasize for a minute is that because of the expertise of these two ladies, one of the things that we have been able to do for the town is to bring in reimbursement for Medicaid. That's something that, and I'll be the first to say I had no idea how it worked. I've been educated, and I'm thrilled to death to know what I know now. But we were able, as a result of using, putting certain allocations and expenses, not in grants or in grants, we were able to impact the reimbursement for the children eligible for Medicaid by just doing the paperwork more than anything else. We were always doing the services, but we need to do the paperwork differently. So we actually provided to Mike Farrell $53,000 in reimbursements just through December this year.
Is that net of, did we have to hire someone?
It's
to-
peanuts. It's
Yeah, but, okay, so.
A couple thousand
yeah,
dollars.
so
we pay. So it's not net. We pay them,
Okay.
and the town gets the
The
money.
town gets a check and it stays with the town.
Right,
That's the
Just
way
so
the law
that-
is written.
right.
That's the way it happened.
And the expectation is that there'll be another $53,000 for the second half of the year. So that
These
would
are
mean
expenses that
just
we've
by the
incurred.
decisions made by these two ladies in terms of how we account for things and what sources.
But this is also something that like only we can do, only the school.
We can only do the
Department can do.
paperwork because
Right.
we're the ones delivering the service.
And so it's,
Right.
it's $53,000 that we're reimbursed based on services that we actually delivered
Correct.
to the
Correct.
students. That,
But it goes to the
but the
town.
money goes back to the town.
But $100,000 that the town was not expecting
Wow.
is actually
It's great.
coming back to the town. I think the other thing I want to emphasize, because I was talking to some folks from town and question about, why does your budget go up 4.6%? How did that happen?
You just had an
And-
override.
And exactly. So one of the things that, I explained is that when we look at us as a town department in the same apples to apples argument as other departments, we have salaries and we have non-salaries. That's really how most people's budgets work. Our salary lines go up 2.5%, which is consistent with other town departments. It is also consistent. And remember, we have step and scale, not just a percentage on top, okay? So we were able through
And step and
some-
scale is not unique to Georgetown.
No.
It's across
It's the
the
way
teaching-
education is
Right.
funded, but it is more than finding 2%, okay? So, one of the things that I wanna emphasize is that we were conscious about, and we did make some reductions in order to make sure that we stayed within that 2.5% that we were asked to work with. In addition to that, all the non-salary lines are below level funding. They're less than we spent last year. So if we did not have some of the expenses related to special education that are tuition and transportation for out of district. Our other in-district students are accounted for in our budget.
They're accounted for in the 2.5% that you're talking about
That's
with
right.
the salary increase, and then the less than the minimal increase, or actually flat, that we
And
have in
do
other
u-
expenses.
And we do use grants, so that's another way we do get a 94, which we're gonna talk about. We do get a special education grant, and we do use that grant to offset, special education expenses as well. So, this wild card of tuition and transportation for out of district is what accounts for the difference above what everybody else in town is coming in at in terms of the way their budgets work. The other thing we have to remember is we don't now have next year $200,000 more in special ed costs. It's the same $200,000 that we got help from the town this year.
Right.
But we said all along, the problem is, as grateful as we are, when money comes from free cash and it's a 1-year deal on to fund a recurring expenses, this is predictable. This is what happened with the stimulus, right? The stimulus money came in, and then when the stimulus money left, we still had the expenses. That's how it works. So I don't want the public to think that, oh my God, this budget's going up $200,000 in special education, new special ed expenses. They're not new. They're pretty much the same ones we have, which we are controlling by working with families within our district, and for those that are out of district, trying to make sure that only the ones that really need to go out of district are going out of district. So we're being very creative with our in-house programs. Again, Donna's brought a lot of expertise in that way. So that's just, we can't fund it if we don't have that 250 or 200 that we got from the town. It's not gonna, that's the deficit. So I just want people to understand that.
And the only difference between the money coming from free cash and the stimulus money in that analogy, the only difference is that the money coming from free cash was going to the special ed and the special ed additional cost, which was something that we have to do. And the stimulus money, in some cases, other towns or whatever would choose how to use the money, not necessarily that they had to put it into an account.
Correct.
And that's a big difference.
It is a big difference, but the similarity that the connection I'm trying to draw here is that it's money that is coming in to short-term money coming in to fund recurring expenses. If that money is not there anymore, and you're right, Rob, we made all kinds of decisions as to how we spent the money. But the point is that once the $1.2 million was not there anymore, those expenses, regardless of what we paid for, were there. And that's the funding cliff that they were all talking about us trying to avoid. So in terms of special education, right now, what's reflected, again, the other thing that Joan and Donna advocated for in this budget, and we did do it, is to centralize all of the special education costs into a district pool, so to speak, as opposed to representing them all in the individual schools. So
This is really the same thing that we went through a couple weeks ago before we went
it
to
is.
FinCom.
It
Same
is.
numbers.
It
find
is.
a little. I like the presentation in that you can see the big thing that people tend to forget, and we've explained it, and I understand why people forget because there's a lot to think about, is that when we have an out-of-district placement, we're responsible for transporting that student back and forth with whatever extra requirements that they may or may not have at 100%. We don't receive any reimbursement for that. And secondly, we're responsible for their annual tuition for the first almost 40,000 of their annual tuition, and then anything above that, we're reimbursed at a 72% rate. But transportation is all ours, no matter what.
Right. But,
Two separate bills.
Two separate
Yep.
bills. So, one of the things I think that stands out and has stood out for some people who've asked questions about this is that the total cost for special education, tuition and transportation for next year is $1.4 million. But the reimbursement that we will receive in circuit breaker is $300,000. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's at a
That's-
72% rate, which
Right.
the minute
One
it's-
year
know
they
that
did
when that will
38%.
yeah, the year that we think it was the first year I was on the committee, first or second year, we were at 72% or so, and then we went right down to 38. And when they reduced, and we can't reduce our services by that amount, we're on the hook for that.
And I think the
incremental
hard
amount.
part about anytime you have conversations about special education or regular education is, you know, we never want to have it come across that we're pitting one against the other. We are about all kids. We have 1,600 plus kids that have a variety of needs, and they all come in with their own strengths and weaknesses and challenges, and we meet them where they are. We are responsible for educating everyone, and there are students that do need and require more than other students, and those experiences cost more in many cases. We understand that, and we put it together as a budget, just as a way to explain how the numbers work. But we don't ever want anybody to think that we're complaining about it. That's not that, you know, it's not special ed has so much money and so regular ed can't. That isn't the way we want to think about it. It's not the way we should think about it. You know, we need to have enough money to educate every student to the level that we need to have it. But special ed, tuition and transportation out, one of the things that we're really focusing on, and that's why we've spent time and energy and money in the last 3 to 4 years building our own in-house programs, having a continuum across the board for kids with particular types of prototypes, is because we believe that that our goal is to have those children be able to be educated in their home community with their peers. And if there are situations where they can't, because their needs are just too great, we understand that we need to find another alternative and work with the families on that. But it's a process of give and take, and you know, we want those kids here if it's at all possible. So we're focused on that. When you think $1.4 million is a lot of money, it is a lot of money.
But
You
it's
know,
really worth the
but it's
investment.
worth it. It's worth the investment in those students if those programs are ones that those students need and
To build the
require.
highest quality special education programs and services in our own district. And it's
Right.
best for all the students, and
Yes,
it's
it is.
best for all teachers, general ed and special education teachers to have that, you know, that
Yeah.
training and development and understanding of how to help the kids.
Right,
All of them.
absolutely, absolutely. Donna, is there anything in the budget that you want to point out, or, you know, do you just want to take questions from the committee?
I think the only comment I would make is there's a couple of new items in there, psychologist consumables and assessments, and in reviewing, again, some of past practices for the budget. I thought it was important in working with Joan that we pull out some of these more specific pieces so that everybody can see exactly where their money's going, why it's going there, and why the needs are. So, you know, as we continue down that road, you may see that again come next year as, you know, we continue teasing out the pieces. But otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. One of the additions that I should point out is that we're really working on is, as our programs have continued to develop, we have some needs for more of a therapeutic environment, particularly with some of our middle and high school programs. And this year we were able, through choice, to add a half-time therapist, which has been very, very, very valuable. Our therapist is very talented, and, you know, it's just been a service we really need, and we really need that to be a full-time therapist next year.
And that goes into special ed.
So, yeah,
Yep.
we'd fund it in special ed. So that's certainly
In the department salaries.
something that we definitely need to do.
So what we would be doing is bolstering our cognitive behavior therapy type program, where we're providing not only educational academic services, but meeting the needs of the social emotional services. So we have somebody there on the spot and in the moment for these students.
The new Pembroke project and then the feasibility study with the middle high school, has the issue of providing the proper facility space?
That's going to be done as part of the feasibility study. Remember the initial feasibility study that DRA did? They actually recommended
Yeah.
some movement of
Yeah.
some spaces. So now that feasibility study's been approved by the voters, and the building committee is now entered into the contracts and
We have
all
the
that.
red, green, and
That,
yellow.
yeah, that should be starting now, and that's absolutely a major focus of that project will be
That was the
making
color
sure they're.
coding of the spaces, the red, green, and
That's cor-
yellow.
That's correct, Ann, yeah.
And then Carol and I and others did sit down and look at what the new footprint of the building Pembroke is going to be and
Right.
have the discussion with regard to what the programs are going to be, the types of spaces those programs need, made some adjustments in that area, so we've been
That
adjusting.
with the
Yeah,
architect.
Is there any discussion or is there any interest in the role of nature and restoration and special ed and attention deficit disorder and how it gets incorporated?
That's certainly an aspect that we can take a look at because we know students who have ADD or ADHD or even some of the executive dysfunction disorders that they do benefit from those movement sensory breaks, and incorporating nature into that would be another good avenue to take a look at.
If you need any, there's an awful lot of empirical evidence out there now showing the different kind of systems that are being used through nature for that help. And I have a lot of those studies if you
Oh,
have
great.
any interest in those. Let me
Yeah,
know.
that'd be wonderful. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Carol, I'm wondering how, with all those programs that we're implementing for special ed, how are they evaluated? How do we know how effective these programs are for the students that they're serving?
Well, what we're doing is we're looking at addressing that in a couple of ways. First of all, we've taken the different programs and we're looking at them across the district. So we're getting together, for example, our Compass program, which meets the needs of our students on the autism spectrum disorder. And we're meeting once a month, analyzing the program, putting protocols, language, things in place that can go across the district. And we have a consultant who comes in for those monthly meetings to work with the team
Okay.
to ensure that we're moving in the right direction. So we're doing that with the alternative program, and we're beginning, doing that also with the language-based learning program and the study skills program. So we have that in place. The second thing that we're looking at doing is I've been out searching for a third party, if you will, who can come in and do for us an overall assessment of our programs.
We talked
The
about
budget is for that.
Right,
Okay,
you know, they
great. So
would do
that's all in
surveys,
this
look at
budget.
programs, so
Okay.
there's, you know, an in-house component with the use of, you know, a couple hours a month of a consultant, and then there's going to be the overarching approach.
And next year we will have, they gave us a break this year because we
Yes,
have some new
and that.
administrative support, but we will have a follow-up to the coordinated program review. So we had some findings and some recommendations that were made the last time, which they're satisfied, we've put in place, but then they're gonna come back again and take a look next year. So there'll be a number of ways where, you know, we're having not only our folks be involved in it, but
Outside.
external support and help
Great.
as well.
That's great to know.
Other questions about special education?
No, and just so everyone at home doesn't think that we're just breezing through this, one, we got the book well in advance, and secondly, this is our second look at special ed
Yes.
for this year.
Yes.
I mean, I know there have been adjustments in some little things, but this is the same thing that we've seen like a
Right.
month ago,
That's a great point, Tony.
for which we greatly appreciate you going through all of the
Yeah,
all
thank you.
of the
Thank
data
you.
for us.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much, and welcome.
If we move right along to tab N, we're gonna talk about the district's revolving accounts and grants. So go ahead, Joan, maybe again, just give them an overview of.
I gave you a description. This was a description that we gave out to the FinCom last summer when we met with them, and they wanted to know a little bit about our revolving accounts. So it's the same description that I gave out then. So then I did the similar breakdown, moving it forward to next year, based upon the current expenses that, you know, we've moved everybody up on the pay scales. We have a couple of retirements in the preschool, as you can see there, so we budgeted appropriately. And so we've created just these mini budgets for each of the revolving accounts. And with our expectation or projection of what we'll have as carry forwards and when we end FY13, based upon what we know today, and then a projected revenue based upon enrollments. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I didn't include athletics in here, that big breakdown.
I don't remember which one, the goal, one of the goals was to get the accounts down to
That-
50.
Yeah, we did that with all of them, Rob. The goal was to do that with pretty much all of them
all
if we
of
could,
them.
but it was particularly with the after-school enrichment programs.
Right.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? What was the goal?
To end up with 50,000 or less in the account.
In the carry forward, to carry
Right.
forward?
So in other words,
Okay.
you want to spend the money, if you're bringing in the money, particularly in the after-school programs, one of the things we want to do is invest more in the programs, right? So
Right.
maybe have more field trips or, you know, the law does not require you spend it all 100% on that. You can spend it on whatever we decide is necessary for the district. But as much as possible, we want to
Put it back into
put
the
it back
program.
into the
Sure.
programs and put it back into the schools that are generating it. So
Sure.
for example, one of the things that they did in Pembroke, Dr. Tanner did, is they bought some laptops for the library because the after-school program uses the library for a good portion of their time. So during the after-school program, they have access to those computers and software, but they are also accessible to the rest of the school population during the day. So that would be an example of the kind of thing we might do so we get a greater value.
I like doing different activities with the kids in the afternoon programs. You know, bringing people in or taking them on little adventures.
Love that. And then right behind that is the grants. So your same kind of thing here. You're gonna see the little mini, I like that, Joan, little mini budgets. And the biggest grant we have is the 94-142, that special ed entitlement grant, which is the one I was just describing with you. And this is what we charge to that grant.
Right, in the past, until this year, it had been all tuitions.
That's right.
So that's,
This is part of the Medicaid.
right, you
Yeah.
can't double dip, you can't get reimbursements for tuitions through Medicaid because it's a federally funded grant. So it's two federally funded programs. So by switching out the people that you don't get anything for Medicaid, we were able to recoup that money, so.
Brilliant. It's
I
totally
was gonna
brilliant.
say,
Totally brilliant. So in this particular section, what you see is the grants for FY14 that we expect to get. But if you flip right behind it, the one that's more of a spreadsheet, I think the important thing to notice
Tab
there. No, it's still in the same section.
Oh, it's O.
It's
It's
O,
O,
yep,
yeah.
same section, and so, but what it does is it lists
be
all, of the grants that we've gotten, and it looks at the last, 9-10 years. And one of the things that you can see is that some grants we got for a little bit of time and then they went away. And then others are pretty sustained every year. So allocation grants like 94-142, like Title I, like Title II. Those are grants that are tied to NCLB and they are based on a formula. Title I, we get a very small grant. And the one thing about grants is they tend to go down and up, but often down. We don't get much in Title I because that's aid to disadvantaged children, and our Title I, our actual poverty in the district is quite low, 7% overall. So it's important for you to get the benefit of looking at, you can see the big picture.
You can see the
and then you can
stimulus.
and you can see the stimulus.
going through there.
Yeah, you can.
And now we're only down to like 460 next year for grants, where we had been well over, closer to 6, almost 7.
Right.
Right, and everything,
FY.
and everything we see, at least coming through my listserv, and I'm sure Carol's listserv, is until they get this federal spending figured out, education's gonna get cut. And special education's gonna get cut, Title I is gonna get cut, I mean, they're going to cut
And when they
them.
cut special ed,
Regular ed gets cut. Special ed's not.
Oh,
I mean, that's
the
one thing.
grants.
That's
The grants,
The grants.
okay.
But that's the one thing I wanted to say when I keep hearing the people on the television saying special ed's. But I'm like, no, special ed's not going to get cut because those are mandated services. It's going to be the other money that is
Right.
being used for other things that is going to be the casualty. But
what's interesting is also the FY13 grant number of 469,018. is the lowest in our 10-year history.
That's right. That's
The
right.
next closest was FY07 at 554.
Well, that's why I wanted you to have the historical picture,
Yeah,
because
so it's important to know that we're relying less, and we don't have as
We're
much
not
in
eligible
grants,
for as
but yet
much in
we're
grants.
still,
because we're
have to
not
keep our
poor
budget
and
at
we're
two.
not underperforming. That's how you get money, if you're a high-need district, if you're poor and underperforming. And we're neither of those things. So, I mean, that's a good thing, but
Yep.
not if you're looking for grant funds. Okay,
my personal favorite, school
and finally,
choice.
school choice. P. So the first thing you have is looking at FY14. The carry forward is anticipated to be $86,000. We're expecting, based on the actual number of students that we know of next year, taking out the seniors that we know are going to graduate out, the revenues are total revenues 223. Based on our expenses. Now, we did have to take a couple of things out of this. We reduced part of the kindergarten teacher salary and moved it back into the budget. We had no choice. And I think we took out the therapist. We moved to another funding source as well. So you have one more year of the server leases. There's one more year on that particular 3-year lease. Athletics is still in here, as you know. These were remember last year we put almost 3 teachers, and now we're moving a little bit off. And then we're gonna be left with expenses of 207.
So we have nothing left in choice.
You won't, and
That's
you
a
don't.
16,000, I mean,
You won't, if you look at the projected revenue at 137, you couldn't sustain, I was thinking, well, you'll get rid of the server lease, but you couldn't sustain those salaries on there because your revenue was only 137. So
Right.
either if you either increase choice by taking more students in, or we have to move lots more off next
Right.
year.
And
and
just,
when we say off this, it goes back to the budget, so that means
Right.
that
Something gets
we're
cut.
reducing, we're reducing other,
that's
we're
right.
either reducing this, or we're reducing this 145
Right.
in the regular budget.
And those are the choices, just like athletics, there are many choices like that, and that's what happens. And so if you follow, just
Current
follow down,
overcrowding.
so that's FY14, that's the real numbers. Then if you look, just again for historical purposes, school choice, looking at it from 2009 to 2013 in terms of the revenue. We have gone from 2009 to $283,000 to 2013 where we have 148.
Does that imply anything other than the obvious of the numbers going down?
It just implies that we're taking
We're taking fewer students.
fewer students.
We
And as
made a
students graduate, we're not adding them back in.
Because we don't have the space.
Because we don't
Well,
have-
well, that's the conversation that, if Mr. Lucia were here, he would want to chime in. Yes, in fact, we don't have more classrooms. We are at the
Right,
max
exactly.
in terms of classrooms.
But there are more there are seats available in classrooms
The
now.
average
If we
class size
increase class
is
size.
not high. So.
The high school class size, Peter's not here, so I'm gonna kind of speak out of turn maybe, and he
No,
might
you
yell
can.
at me. But I believe the class size in the high school is actually lower than where
He would agree.
we put it at. So there are seats available. The question is how many seats.
And that's
Are-
where the current school choice students, we would
Well,
want them to go.
we allocate.
That's
where
our
we,
choice.
that's where
Yeah.
we put
That
them.
would be a choice.
Typically, we look at where. Typically, we look at the number of.
Go ahead. It's very complicated.
We
It
look at-
is, I've done a
We
little
look at
bit
the
of
average
research on
class.
this.
The average class size that we agreed on is whatever it is in Pearlie, Pembroke, and the middle high school, and then if there's an average class size in first grade, we agree on. I'm going to say 22 because I can't remember the real number, and it's coming in at 20. So we'd say we have 2 spots. We can open up 2 spots, or X number of spots in first grade.
Generally, if it was that close, we wouldn't, but
But-
we could.
But we'll say we're going to open up spots in these grades
That's
because
right.
we have seats
Exactly.
available
Yes.
based on the class size that we want.
Right.
The high school now, I'm not sure why, the class size has gone down.
Well, part of it is we targeted a lot of our money in the override to make sure we had adequate core class sizes, enough options for kids, and we added those electives. So that was conscious. Remember, one of our things was to mitigate the accreditation risks.
Right.
So
And to restore the
and we
cuts
didn't
that-
plan on the
electives that
number
have
of
been
kids
cut.
this particular year that left for whatever reason. You know, we figure about 13 to 15 kids that go
31
to,
left.
that go to vocational schools or private schools. For whatever reason, this particular year, there was a higher than average number. And that accounted for having more slots available than we had expected to have.
So typically, I'm going to say May. You go through. No, or is it earlier than that? It might be April. April. Yeah, I'm thinking April will go through and say, here are the class size. Here's
Right.
the average
April,
class size that we would like to see, and here are the spaces. Carol will recommend number of spaces.
Yeah, we'll go through and look at that. You know, for years, we added quite a few kids, particularly at the high school level, because a lot of kids, Laura and I were just going over it today, we already have 7 or 8 students that have applied for 9th grade. And they're like anxious to find out whether they're going to get in or not. And we explained to them the timeline, but that's unsolicited. We didn't open any slots and advertise any slots, but you know, already there's people who are interested. And then the following, we thought it would also be interesting to show you the trends in receiving and sending. So the pink is the sending and the receiving is the green. So again, going back historically, looking at 2004 to 2013, and I think that tells the story. So in 2004, we had over 60 students that we were receiving, and only 28 that were leaving, and now we have like 27 in and 23 out. So that's just, and so when we talk about why school choice has not been sustaining and sustainable, that's why. The other dilemma we always have is how do you keep school choice as much as possible for those things that are one-time expenses? You know, so that you can do new computer leases, you can do new curriculum adoption, you can do those kind of things. What you really don't want to do is put sustainable things on it, and we haven't really had the chance not to do that. And then finally in this section is just you're used to seeing this. Laura puts this together, and this just, again, we're going from the big to the small. This just breaks down in a little historical way, you know, by grade and by school that kids get sent to, that choice out to, choice, you know, where they come from when they choice in, parochial schools, private schools, vocational schools, and the number of homeschool students. Just gives you an overall view of sort of how that breaks down specifically. So in April, generally, as Ann said, we would have a discussion about school choice. We would look at current enrollment. We would engage in the conversation of determining whether or not we're going to open any school choice slots this year, and if so, what slots, what places would we make slots available. We would advertise those slots based on what we get for interest. If we say 10 slots, just say pick 9th grade, we get 15 slots, we must do a lottery. That's required. And if there's someone applying that has a sibling that's already here, we must accept the sibling. So there's rules around that too. There's rules around everything.
So once we decide on the number of choice students, then it has to stay that way for the year. We can't, and then we hear that more students are leaving to go to a private school or some other.
I need to read the law again, Ann, but Pam, but I think there are 2 times of the year when you can open slots up. I
Right.
believe the first one is you have to let the state know if you're going to open slots, and I think it's by June
Okay.
that you
So
have
it's
to
all
let them in,
legally
and then I
prescribed
believe
and-
it's the second is by December. You
Okay.
can open spaces again if you have them in December. We've never done that.
And the thing that we always have to try to balance is we can go through this all in April and say we're going to open up all these spots and award choice students the opportunity to come here, and then we have 5 families that move in.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's
So
why we never cut it close.
We try not to cut it like that, and
Right.
and this just speaks to something that Dave Bjork always used
Oh,
to
yeah.
say about choice. It's a funding trap.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's
And you can look at history, but that doesn't necessarily determine the future.
no.
Some districts don't accept school choice for a lot of reasons, and other districts accept school choice and feel that it's a great benefit to the overall community. Some people say, if you want to take advantage, you live in Georgetown.
Yep.
Others, so I mean, there's just a lot of there's a lot of perspectives
Yeah.
about this issue. But the goal is to try to not make it, like Ann said, a funding trap. We need to do it for the right reasons and make sure that it's not sacrificing anything that we want to do for our Georgetown students first and foremost. So that actually concludes the span of the budget.
Anyone have questions, concerns? There's not, I mean, unfortunately, there's just not a lot to it. I mean, it's
Most of
just,
the change.
no, I mean, other than it's, and I hate to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but our revolving accounts are diminishing and our costs are continuing to go up and we're not, I mean, I think we're doing a lot with what we have and I think that speaks volumes to what the administrators and the teachers are able to do. But we're still not moving things ahead. Like I was speaking to Tracy Southwick the other day. She had a question about something. And I just realized it just at that moment I thought, you know what, we're sitting here talking about athletics and all that we're gonna do with that and what are we doing for all of the other co-curricular, activities that we'd like to offer our students.
Arts and music.
Right, all that. So it's one of those things where there's still so much we can do, but we're grateful that we can do what we can as well. So,
And
it's a
I have to
balance.
say, the override I know is really, stressful for people with their taxes, but it allowed not only the schools, but the whole town to catch their breath. We are not talking about $600,000, $800,000 cuts. We're not talking about asking the town for $700,000, $800,000 increases, right? That override did for us what we needed it to do, and it did help the town. Nobody in town is looking at massive cuts the way we were looking at them 3 years ago.
Right.
So now the goal is to look at, like we were talking today about, just looking at, Don and I were talking about special education and, really looking at, over the next 3 to 5 years, how many, where do the students fall? How many students are going to age out? How might, that look? Looking at the teaching ranks, how many teachers may retire in the next 3 to 5 years? And how does that work into long-term
And how are
budget
student
forecasting?
needs being met by the programs that we have and how can we continue to develop them and develop our
right.
teachers in the way that our students,
That's right.
tailoring to their needs.
So that's the process of not just looking, at a micro level, but really continuing to always look historically and the macro level, trying to always think ahead and not be reactive, but be
Right.
responsive
Exactly.
with our strategic goals.
I just want to thank Joan for what she's brought to the district. It's already been evident.
I would second that.
Absolutely. Carol, you know what the question that's just occurs to me is, if we were in better financial shape, is there something that you wish we were doing in our schools in Georgetown that we're not doing? Something that feels really, really important that's not accounted for in this budget and none of us has the insight or knowledge to raise, and maybe it's something that you're just praying nobody ever asks for?
No, I mean, I think I'm excited about the possibility of what the technology can do in the new Pembroke, and potentially what we could do for technology even through the middle high school feasibility study. Because I think that there's a lot we can do to reach the range of all learners
with technology,
better
with better
and more
technology.
up-to-date technology and the accessibility of that. So that's always been a struggle, is how do we've actually found creative ways to get, and thanks to the donation of many parents, that's really helped a ton. But, I think there's just so much we can do. It never replaces the interaction with teachers, and we never want that. But there are a great number of things that the kids of today to do with technology that I think our kids are behind a little bit in their ability to do. I think we're always talking about, just looking at the kind of outlets for creativity that our students, can have. Because I think when people say to me, it's all about MCAS and testing and, you can teach students to prepare for MCAS and not do it in a way that's not creative and innovative and engaging. I mean, that's not the intention of MCAS, was to cut out all that in teaching and learning. So I want us to continue to think about the various ways and making sure we have materials and programs to really tap into, you know, creativity and looking at those high achieving learners. That's in our strategic plan. You know, really, are there those learners that we really know we're maybe not servicing to the extent? So there's always those things that we always want to continue to move forward with. So those would be a couple of my ideas. The principals might have some other ideas, and certainly going forward, we can certainly have a discussion with you about that in terms of looking forward at the strategic direction we want to take in the district. Continue to look at that.
I just think it's, in some ways, it's hard to know what the community wishes.
Yeah, values.
That, you know, what do they wish the schools offered? And I think that's a hard thing for any parent to know until you have a child who you think might do better if
If.
only.
Yeah.
But how do we find out what those if onlys are?
Yeah.
And what's the mechanism for
Well, one of the things we did put in the strategic plan is that we want to take a look at engaging the community in a conversation about that. And we've talked about, you know, I know there's a couple of companies that I've had the chance to work with, and I know in the past, and I know there's like Beverly and Danvers and a number of communities have invested in actually put money into hiring a firm to come in and actually engage focus groups with the community, because we can do focus groups, but sometimes people aren't going to talk honestly to us. It's easier for sometimes an external person to have to come in, and
right.
so we've talked about identifying indicators of excellence and looking at, you know, getting feedback and information from the community. That's not something we've budgeted for, but that's something that's in our plan. That, again, that would be what I'd use I'd use a school choice for something like that, because it's a one time. You're going to spend $7,000, whatever, to get this done, but that's a one time expense. It replaces itself. That's the kind of thing that you know, I think we do need to do, and that's we have that as a strategic directive. Okay.
All right. Moving right along. We're gonna go back to cover
Okay.
what we didn't cover.
Okay.
So Zach, you're filling in for Cole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he cheering on the girls varsity, and that's why you're here, or okay?
He told us. I didn't know what his.
I can't remember. He
he's
did
at
tell.
a All-State
That's right.
singing concert.
I
He's,
Forgot that. Okay.
Yeah, he's performing on Saturday, I think, and preparing for the next 2 days.
Oh, great.
That's
Well,
actually
welcome.
really exciting.
That's
Thanks.
fantastic. Is he the only one?
No, there's Anne-Marie Champa is also with him.
Okay.
So she and Cole with Mrs. LaFlamme went to Boston, and they get to perform at Symphony Hall.
Wow, that's great.
That's fantastic.
They're both very talented.
Yeah.
So glad for them.
Good.
Other than that, I think everyone knows about the basketball game tonight.
Knock
And,
wood.
Have you heard anything?
No.
not yet. I'm hoping though.
He probably tweets.
And the girls' ice hockey team also has a game on Saturday against Austin Prep. That's at the Governor's Academy. So I know they're looking for a lot of support. And I think this week was just basically everyone's jumping back into it after a nice long week off. And it's crunch time right now, I think, for a lot of people. I know in a lot of my classes, we're preparing for like the end of the year. Some of the tests that we have to take, a lot of AP classes, so we're really pushing down. And no, everything. I think everything's going well.
And we're in between sports seasons. We're kind of wrapping up.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people getting ready for the next season,
Yeah.
Yeah.
getting in shape.
It's also nice, the prospect of being outside again for sports.
Oh, I
So
know.
nice.
Yeah.
So nice.
Mhm.
Good.
Looking forward to the nice weather.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, Zach. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to comment on an agenda item? Okay. Brian, do you want to? I'm sorry to jump around like that on you.
That's okay. And Peter's going to do his. I think March
On the 14th. Okay. We moved things around because of the girls' game, so he could get there, and then so Chris could go as well.
Give me a minute to fire up the technology here.
So Brian's gonna, while he's doing it, Brian's gonna be coming back before the committee soon to talk about an after-school program that he would like to create, he and his staff would like to create at the middle school, starting like with like a little flyer, you know, kind of a spring kickoff kind of thing to see how much interest it will generate, and then if it generates the interest, to look at doing it for the year next year. So that'll be coming, they're working on the final things of the proposal, but then that'll be coming before you to get your endorsement.
Okay. And just so that you guys, just from a historic perspective, we started out first with a Pembroke after school.
First with the
Oh, I'm sorry, Pearly after school
Or
program
middle and, I'm sorry, for 2 schools.
for everyone but we held it all at Pembroke.
Pearly.
Oh, sorry.
We get that right.
Oh
Let's
my
try
gosh,
that
I'm
again.
sorry. So we started out with the Pearly program, and it was for Pearly and Pembroke, held at Pearly.
Right.
And it was a rousing success. And so then what we did was we decided to, or Carol and the administrative team came up with the program at Pembroke. So what we were concerned about was when you separated the programs, were we going to start losing, was it going to make financial sense to have both programs? They turned out to both be very successful. But we helped out funding for that program. So we'd do the same, I assume, at the middle school.
Yes, we'd have to give them a little bit to start up. but
Right, a little start.
The 2 programs at this elementary schools do 2 things. Well, actually, they do 3 things. The first is they have a program till 6 for people who need daycare. But then there are other programs called enrichment that don't happen every day that people can choose to do. And then there's a convenience hour for families, for parents who may need to work a little bit longer and, comes to pick up their child. So they can stay in the program for a short period of time, and that works well. So we're running that at both programs. The plan at Bryan's school would be an enrichment program, not really a daycare program.
Right, and
Right.
this is a result of somewhat of an informal survey that I did last year through email, asking parents and students what they would like to see in an after-school enrichment program and what courses would like to be offered. So we kind of did a tally and took what were the most well-liked and asked about programs, and we're going to implement them soon.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, while we were waiting for him to get
Yeah.
the technology,
So-
to let you know, he'll be coming back, and that'll be.
We won't grill you right now on it.
That
No.
was, that was a good block. To give
There
time
you go.
To fire up, that was well played. Well, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity tonight to present our kind of mid-year updates. And essentially, that's what I believe my role is here tonight, is to allow you the opportunity to see what type of programs we have been instituting and showcase them, and maybe give you a little bit of information on them, both you and the general public, so people will have an awareness of how hard everyone is working at the middle school. And I will say, now that I'm into my 2nd year as the principal of the middle school, I continue, particularly this year, to be even further impressed with all of the staff members and their willingness to just continue the work. And we're starting to see some things get off the ground now and really take hold. And it's impressive, the time and the energy that people continue to put in. And there's some excitement around some of these programs. So some of it is a little dry when you're reading it, and I'm not one to read the entire.
Just
Thank
hit
you.
the highlights.
So
yeah.
I'll just highlight it and hit the bullets, and be happy to answer any questions either during or after. So what I'd like to do is just show you where we're at as we chase our 4 goals for the year. And the first one revolves around curriculum, to try to balance and have a comprehensive curriculum for grades 6 through 8. As you know, the Mass Curriculum Frameworks are going to be changing and incorporating the Common Core. So here is what we have been working on, and there's a lot here. First one I'm actually extremely excited about. It's an English Language Arts Vertical Teaming Committee, which has been formed with the help of Julie DeRoche and some teachers in grades 6 through 8. These teachers volunteered. All of them have a great working knowledge of the Mass ELA frameworks as well as the Common Core. They are doing things such as researching best practices for teaching content and looking at different assessments. They're going to be reporting out at our school-based meetings and filling in staff on their progress. And the best part is they enjoy doing that. They enjoy working and sharing that information with a group of learners. They're working very hard this year to align the standards across the grade levels in the schools. So this will eventually be an entire district initiative. And they're also looking at creating district assessments, which should really help to support the school-based and grade level curriculum plans. As we move down to word generation, this is something I wanted to highlight. As it says, it's a multidisciplinary academic vocabulary program. The short and long of that is we've implemented in grade 6 word generation, which highlights what the developers have considered to be the most important vocabulary words that students need to know in various grades. The best part about this is students in 6th grade get 5 words a week, and they're incorporated into all the Common Core classrooms. So they use the same academic vocabulary in English, math, science, and social studies. So by the time that they are done with these 5 words, they are embedded in their mind, and they can use them in different dynamics and different curricula. So it's been tremendously successful. We're going to be incorporating it in to 7th grade next year. There's still a discussion about whether or not it's necessarily appropriate at the 8th grade level. So we're working with the 8th grade team as we discuss that. The open response training on November 6th was with Bill Amorosi, who was one of the pioneers in the development of MCAS, especially the writing components. So he was in on the ground floor and helped develop a lot of the open response formats. So he was an invaluable resource, and I participated in the training as well, and it was incredible. It brought a ton of information, and we're using it on a daily basis as we're increasing our writing across the curriculum. The new reading assessment tool, that's a little misleading. We do have a reading assessment tool that we're using in grade 6 right now, and that has been successful to see where students are, but I'll talk a little bit in a minute about some assessments that we're purchasing for next year to assess reading. All staff were trained in open response as a repeat there. I apologize for that. The professional development on January 28th was dedicated to writing across the curriculum, and that is just what it sounds like. What it does is it teaches teachers across all the 4 discipline areas, particularly English, science, social studies, and math, standardized writing concepts so that when we do it, complete our writing across the curriculum, they will all be able to not only assess properly and correct properly, but they'll be able to develop writing programs within their particular areas of content. And the math department, that's cut off on the bottom, has monthly in-service trainings working with Paula Utter and the members of the grade levels to begin transition to the Common Core. Goal number 2, data assessment. We are using that to inform instruction. I will kind of close this down a little bit and give you the short version. We use, specifically what we've been using is MCAS data. As we start to build in new assessments into the middle school, we'll be using hopefully quarterly assessments and some of our new reading assessments to help us to guide instruction. But for now, the MCAS data at the beginning of the year, and we're lucky enough to get it earlier now, it's broken down by individual students, by grade levels, by cohorts year to year, and by subgroups. We get item analysis breakdown so we can target particular questions or strands. And the staff is extremely aware of all the areas of need within the different disciplines. We discuss it at staff meetings. They have all the breakdowns in email form and in PDF form, so they can break down individual students. We can even break down in particular classroom groups from years prior and for current years. If anyone is looking for any particular data, I have it. I will not bore you with it now. I have some in my head and some in front of me in regards to MCAS. So part 2 of that is closing the achievement gap between regular and special ed subgroups. We're very lucky in Georgetown. We have one subgroup that's special education. My former district, we had 5 different subgroups, and it was difficult sometimes to narrow it down. We do have a laser-like focus this year with our special education staff. They're receiving training in all different areas. Some of the highlighted ones, I know people in the Compass Room, which is our ASD, our Autism Spectrum Classroom, have been trained in systematic educational supports for students with ASD, social group components, positive behavior supports, and those have been fantastic. We also are looking at, we've organized a team and a committee to look at the enhancement and enrichment programs that we currently have and how we can better utilize those. Keeping what works and looking at what doesn't work and trying to improve consistently on those. Part of that is looking at different scheduling options. We're now looking at 2 options, which are a flexible schedule and a rotating schedule. In the rotating schedule, it's very interesting because we determined just yesterday that we can actually gain, if it works, and we have to work with the high school, we can actually gain almost 17 hours a year in actual extra instructional minutes, just by cutting down movement times and by dropping a period a day and moving it. So it's been a very interesting research project. So, but there's a lot of work to be done because we work in concert with the high school, we share staff, we share programs, so we're trying to navigate that. Okay, these 2 following ones are fairly self-explanatory. This goal 3 revolves around bullying prevention and intervention plans for the middle school. The first area, the school climate and student survey, is a survey that was completed last month for our 8th grade students, and it gave us a great deal of information about their feelings on their school and personal safety, bullying and teasing, their peer relationships within the building and outside. So we have, it says data collector will be analyzed. It's already been collected, and we are in the process of analyzing it. We're working very closely with the guidance department. Justin Lapomi in particular, who's one of our guidance interns who was instrumental in developing the survey. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. The health staff, the phys ed teachers and health teachers have integrated the anti-bullying program into their daily curriculum. So when they have health class, they go through scenarios and they use a scripted text to do that. And the third thing is we're planning to host an anti-bullying Good Choices theme day for sometime later in the spring, probably after MCAS, which ties us up for about 2 months. And goal number 4, to enhance communication between the school and student families and helping to deliver the mission of the middle school. Daily announcements have been a big success. We continue to involve the students in performing the pledge and putting personal announcements, celebrating personal accomplishments. We do birthdays on a daily basis, which they love. And we coordinate them with famous birthdays, so they they're famous for a little while. And quarterly newsletters, and also, it's not up there, but we continue to increase our email, increase our email database to let parents know, not necessarily on a quarterly basis, but if and when it has to be on a daily basis, if there's issues going on, excuse me, announcements that we need to let them know about. And that's been pretty effective. Star of the Month program has been very successful. We're recognizing 2 students in each grade level on a monthly basis, a boy and a girl. And it's not necessarily for academic excellence, although that can be a part of it. It's for catching someone doing something nice, it's for being a good school citizen, for doing something in their community, and they're nominated by the teachers at their grade level or any staff member who chooses to throw in a nomination. This last one is a good news phone call to parents. We got together as a staff and decided it would be a great idea on Friday afternoons, when it's been a long week, take 5 minutes before you leave and make a phone call to at least 1 or 2 homes and just have something positive to say about the student that you work with. And I can tell you that from my perspective, I do it as well. The feeling I get, I'm sure, is much better than the feeling that they get, because it lasts with me for a long time. It's a nice thing to do, and it's as healthy for us and makes you realize why you're really there. And I'm sure, as a parent myself, I'm sure parents appreciate getting a phone call from a teacher or a principal and not answering the phone and saying, "What's wrong?"
How many sides of
What's
relief
wrong?
do you get after
Exactly.
that?
Well, you do. Well, when I first call, I'll say, "This is Mr. Gill from the middle school, and everything's fine." And they'll say, "Oh," you can hear them say, "Phew," on the other end. So, and that's just it's not a completely comprehensive look at what we're doing, but I just wanted to give you somewhat of an update of all the good things that are going on, and that we are on track, and we will continue to do so. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have to say, the one thing I like is that you're our longest standing middle school principal in 5 years, I think. I'm not sure how many years.
That,
So it's nice to have this and not have, well, I'm just picking up from last
Right.
year when.
Well, I'll
So thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed my experience, but it wasn't really a high bar to reach when it was only a year. So.
Well, hey, for those of us sitting here that have been like every year going, okay, what are we doing?
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank
Brian.
you. All right. Questions, concerns, comments?
Okay,
Keep it up.
now that I'm done and this hasn't crashed, I'd like to say a special thank you to Donna Straight, who happened to be in the building today when my laptop crashed at 5:30 and it would not
right.
recharge, and she let me borrow hers. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
That's teamwork.
Friends are
right
for,
there.
that's right.
Carol, do you want to let them leave?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Rob.
Moving right along. Any questions on the superintendent's information for the committee? Okay. The only thing that I did, I'll give this back to, did you include the Baker Adams stuff in the packet?
Yes.
What I'm gonna do, Laura, I'll just give this back to you.
Let's see. Right?
This, I've never seen this form before, so I'll give it back to you, but the trust will tell us the total money that we have to allocate, and then from that point, we'll decide how many awards and the monetary value of each award.
Right.
And the committee with Carol will determine the selection, which is how we've done it in the past, and that's how it's set up to work. So I'll send this back over to you. Can I just hand it back? Back
Sure.
over?
Here you go.
All right. We're gonna do the high school review next time. All right. So I guess we're up to no financial report. We did that last time, and we did the budget. Subcommittee reports. Budget and finance. Do you have anything other than the budget?
I know, everything.
It was a
That we
huge
just-
piece of
yeah.
work.
Let's see. Governance.
We haven't met for the
Okay.
past 2
We're
weeks.
too busy with the budget.
Negotiating. That's. Believe me, I
Well, and
understand.
you've got a
Having
few
done it for
budget-
5 years.
You've got a few things that, you're trying to get approved, so.
Negotiating.
Getting to that point.
We're still moving along
We're
with
still-
GISA.
Yeah, but we're close.
Yeah.
We're close.
Things are going well.
We're looking forward to maybe March,
We meet again in
wrapping
this
that up.
third week of March.
Actually, in March also, we'll be talking with you about the final language that we're gonna be trying to, for the future evaluation.
Okay.
March will be
Public relations.
Again, we haven't met. for the
Okay,
past 2 weeks.
that's fine. Safety. Nothing.
We haven't met for the past 2 weeks.
a monthly meeting.
Right, it's a
School-
monthly meeting.
School building.
I think the only thing that's new from the last time is that February 19th was when the building committee met and voted 7-1 to approve the submittal of the design development 100% complete drawings to the MSBA. So that has moved on, and the other dates are all the same, but they're worth reiterating, I think. The next meeting for the building committee is March 12th. The 100% complete construction documents are due August 5th. These are just highlight times. The start of construction is anticipated for November 2013, and occupying the building is anticipated for September 2015. And then the middle high school feasibility study is underway, and come December of this year, they will have developed project scope and budget, and then the punchline to that is it goes to the MSBA for approval January 2014, and then in May of 2014 it comes to the town for the town to vote on that. That would be it.
Wow. Certainly keeping us busy.
Yes.
Okay, next up is old business. It's the school committee superintendent operating protocols. Pam, I think you came up with this. Wasn't this part of your, like, I remember you kind of surfacing this a while ago.
Yes, yes. I believe I had found something like this on another district website, and it was so long ago. Sorry, I don't remember which school website it was.
I think it was
But-
Andover.
I thought it was
Yeah.
Linfield.
Okay.
Linfield.
I think we should
It might have
probably
been
find out if
Linfield.
we're gonna.
I think it was Linfield, that's right, yes. And it's just meant to kind of clarify for the public and for school committee members, particularly new school committee members, you know, the role and responsibility of the school committee.
Yep.
And because it's, you know,
No,
it's
I
a real
like
clear,
it.
simple, one-page item on what our role and responsibilities are.
Right. Not meant to be our policies, which like are this big, and
Right,
just
it's
why we're
not
here
a
and what we're
policy.
supposed to do for the district.
Just a description, yes, of what we do.
How you're gonna operate.
Comments, questions, concerns?
I think the only two comments that I had was on the bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, ninth bullet. Just to clarify, perhaps in writing, what the word support means, because it. What I mean by that is that so people can't. I'll read it out loud. It's not very long. Base our decisions on available facts, vote our convictions, avoid bias, and uphold and support the decisions of the majority of the school committee once a decision is made. And I guess what would help clarify what support means is that it's not telling somebody who may vote no on a particular item that if that item were to come up again, they somehow have to change their vote. That's what support means. That's not what this is talking about. And so that was something that I thought would help me to be clarified in fine-tuning the writing of that. And the last one was the third bullet from the bottom, which is striving to have no surprises for the committee or superintendent. All members will receive the same information on all topics in a timely manner. And on that one, adding that if something does come up that turns out to be a surprise, what would be the protocol for how to handle it at that point in time? And the solution may be to table the discussion to talk about it later, but that was those were the two that I just thought I needed some clarity on.
So
Or
what
might
would you?
help.
It doesn't say to have no surprises. It says to strive to have no
And I
surprises.
think it's mo- and
So,
it's-
I mean, if spontaneity, we want to allow for spontaneous discussion.
Right, and it's a guiding principle. It's not the.
Right.
It's not our policy manual, like where we go into. Like we have some great policies that are coming up that I'm thrilled with. It's just meant how we're gonna
We're
operate.
just going to prepare and become informed about the topics that we're bound to discuss at a particular meeting ahead of time as much as possible.
Right.
And what it says, I have no, I mean, I'm right on with it. What it says, I have no arguments with. It's not about what it says. I think it's about that it's just missing one more piece to clarify what then you do if something does happen. But that's just me.
So what would you want it to say?
Well, I haven't figured out the exact wording. You know, this was something that was in, you know, packets, and was looking at it and came up, and I haven't.
Rob, I was just in thinking this through what you've said, it seems to me that what perhaps is missing is just one more bullet point that says something about recognizing that while we agree to these principles, we also recognize that the committee consists of individuals who will not always agree, and yet we agree to respect our differences, even when they're not upheld. Something along those lines. It seems to me like.
Well, and there's a bullet actually right below the first one that Rob pointed out. Work to build trust between among school committee members and the superintendent by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement.
Yeah.
That's true, yes.
Yeah.
And I think support the decisions doesn't mean that you agree, but you uphold the decision of the committee.
You accept the majority.
Right,
Or
exactly.
you
Like
accept.
I'll use
Even
my
if you
own
don't agree,
my own personal
you
example. I
understand.
voted against starting school before Labor Day. The first year it was presented, and it was a 3-2 vote. And then the next year it came up again, and I voted the same way. It didn't mean that I didn't support the position of the committee. It meant that I believed that in starting after Labor Day, but it didn't say that I didn't support by voting no again the next year.
Right. Okay.
If that, I don't know if that clarifies.
So I just think
No,
it's
I'm not
important to
taking-
communicate with the public about what our roles are,
Right.
responsibilities, particularly to anyone who might want to be a member of the school committee at some point. Like,
Just so happens there's a spot
But
available.
it just so happens, that's
and that
right.
papers are due back by March 12th.
By March 12th, one could pull papers if one was interested.
So do you want to make changes to this? Do you want it to go back to governance, or?
Have we?
Has it ever been to governance?
Well, that's
Yes, it's been, and
yeah,
I think
this
we
is
have
where it
brought it
came
to the
from.
governance
In
meetings
packets.
before.
Yeah. This
I
is
think
where it
we've
came
had
from.
a chance to
Yeah.
look at this before.
Yeah.
It's on old
That's
business.
It's on
yeah,
old
exactly.
business,
Yeah,
yes.
that's why.
And you know, like all policy, it doesn't need to be written in stone either. It's something that you could review at a future date. and
Honestly, I would suggest
alter
reviewing it.
on a regular basis.
I would review it
Annual.
and change it at your the first meeting after your reorg in May, because then it gives all the members,
people,
new
yes.
people, a chance to see it and understand it.
Mhm. Okay.
That's just my recommendation for the next 5 meetings.
Okay, but do you want it to go back to governance to discuss, or wait until then to see if the new committee member has questions as well?
I think we should go with this for now and get it moving, because otherwise we're going to be at the next 3 meetings.
Right, it's been sitting
Yeah.
for
That's fine.
quite a while.
That's fine.
What happens to this if we approve
It
it?
just, it gets posted
It's
on
not
the
a-
website.
Yeah, it's not a policy. It's just our statement of beliefs, how we want to operate as a committee.
Gets posted on the website.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All right. So Chair will entertain a motion to approve the school committee superintendent operating protocols as presented.
So moved.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is a GEA contract. As Carol explained, we worked on this contract through last year. And the reason why it's coming to you now was because we were waiting, or we were not waiting, we were waiting to get the contracts all put together from a document standpoint, thinking that we were going to approve the regular contract and then the teacher evaluation as an add-on or a side letter or something like that. Apparently, other people thought that we're just going to do the entire document at once, but we really need to get this. This has been done since last summer, so we need to get this done. We need to get
Been sitting.
everything processed the way that it should be in accordance with the contract. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons is we have teachers that are retiring, and this has to get to MTRS so that they can start their pensions on time.
Right.
So then once the teacher eval is all done, then we'll just, then go
Right,
ahead and
and-
approve that.
Right, and MTRS doesn't care about that.
Right.
They only care about the salary
They care about the
schedules.
dollars. Right.
I
And
don't
this is
know,
the same
where's
thing
signature page?
that we, I didn't notice the signature page, and so that's what,
Either, that's a little concerning. Because we need your signatures.
can we vote and sign
Yeah,
later, or do
I
we
think that's what
need?
we're gonna have to do, because the
Okay.
signature page isn't here, so if you vote,
Um,
and then maybe what we can do is, when you come in to pick up your packet or
Signature
something,
page, I
you
got
can-
it.
Is there a
Oh,
warrant
where's
coming
the-
up?
Before all the appendixes, page 26.
Yeah, that's what I got too, okay.
That's the
Oh,
page.
wow.
Is that
And
the-
everything else is
Oh,
appendix.
right, because that's the end of it.
Okay,
Okay, and it's Ann that signs.
okay. So are there any questions about this? It's the same, it's what we agreed to, it's what we talked about last, was it September?
Well, that's when it was September 1st, 2012, but we, it was before that.
Yeah, it was,
Well,
yeah.
before that we discussed it.
Yep. Questions, comments, concerns?
Some people strike through for one contract length. That's what some districts do.
Yeah.
They strike through for one contract length, and then it comes out. If you, on the signature page, there's a strike through.
The only page is a strike through,
Yeah,
Oh,
the top.
25, yeah.
so
Bottom of
it's, you know,
25.
but
Bottom of 25 and top of 26.
I've seen contracts where they strike through, the first year there's a change. In 3 years, when the contract is done again, the strike-throughs disappear, and then it's just the new language. That's how
There's
some
there's strike-throughs throughout it.
Yes,
That's-
I
I think
noticed.
that's what
there
it is.
Okay, 'cause I,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
put the change, they wanna show the old language.
Yeah, they like to hold that old
And in
language.
3 years, when you do it again, the strike-throughs go
Are
away.
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page 17 and 18, that's right.
So again, I mean, the reason why we're going through this is because we had discussions every
You-
step
you
of the
voted-
way,
you
and we
voted.
voted to approve it. This is just the language
Tentative agreement.
part of it. So Chair will entertain a motion to approve the GEA contract for the time period September 1st, 2012 to August 31st, 2015 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Good, that's great.
Motion carries. All right, so do you want me to sign?
Yeah, just sign it, if you don't mind, Ann.
No? I'll send that over to you guys. Okay, next up is new business is the first reading of new policy file JS International Exchange Students. We got this last time, and it was, initial distribution, I think is what they call it.
That's right.
So we don't do anything this time. We have a second reading at our next meeting, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. And approval.
Yep.
Okay. Lastly, declaration of surplus material from Pearlie. Appears that we have extra overhead projectors. So Chair will entertain a motion to approve the declaration of surplus materials at Pearlie as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are gonna have an executive session. It'll be brief. Just one quick thing, we briefly mentioned this earlier. The town election is going to be held on Tuesday, April 30th, which is gonna be combined with a special, state primary, so it's gonna save the town. I think I read $10,000, which is nice. But that means the last day to pull papers, and return papers is Tuesday, March 12th. And there is one seat available on the school committee, so I encourage you to call, anyone to find out about it and, take an interest, because it is actually pretty fun. And the last day to register to vote will be April 10th. March 12th is the next school building committee meeting. Are there any other meetings that people need to know about? Oh, next Thursday, a week from tonight, we have our public hearing for the budget at 6:45, third floor, same location. So please come with your questions, comments, anything you want to say. This is a time for the public to say whatever they want about the budget. It's open to the public and it's for the public.
And maybe one of the things we could do is, I was just asking them, if we can post this budget, this draft budget on the website, like tomorrow, then people could go to the website if they wanted to review the documentation and the backup in advance of the public hearing, so that they could come to the meeting prepared. We will post it on the website.
Okay, so look on the website and review it and ask questions. Next, like I said, next Thursday is the public hearing, and then we have a regular meeting right after that. And I think that's it. All right, so we are going to have an executive session for the purpose of
Negotiations with non-union.
negotiations with non-union personnel, and it's Chapter 30A, Section 21, Paragraph 2. So this is roll call. We won't be returning to regular session.
Aye,
Yes.
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 All right, and you are free to leave.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
coming.
much.
Thank you.